Hi, everyone. Let's say we're comparing means from independent samples from two different populations. So, for example, let's say we have a population of men versus a population of women in the US. Let's say we're studying weights. So, here's the population of weights of US men in pounds. Here's the population of weights of women in US pounds. These populations could have different means, different standard deviations. And then when we collect samples, we could have different sample sizes, which lead to different sample standard deviations and different sample means. If we're a drug company and we want to test the efficacy of a drug, then we might want to set up a control or placebo group that does not get the drug. And we could have a population, which is the treatment, or the drug group, which does get the drug. The null hypothesis could be written like this. The means of the two populations are equal. And look at this lovely formula for the t-test statistic. Again, the upper right is 0 under the null. That often happens. And we have a different formula for the number of degrees of freedom. Now, if we assume that the population variances are equal, then some people might use a pooled sample variance, but some statisticians warn against this. Now, one reason why researchers might want to use a pooled sample variance is that it then makes it easier to reject the null, and we have a more powerful test. So then it's more likely that you're going to basically prove your research hypothesis, the alternative. We can also talk about comparing proportions from independent samples. For example, population of men versus population of women, the proportion of men who support Senator Smith versus the proportion of women who support Senator Smith. Sample statistics, different sample sizes, numbers of successes, sample proportions, typical null hypothesis, P1 equals P2. The test statistic formula, upper right hand goes to 0. And then you have a pooled sample proportion. We can also compare standard deviations or variances, typical null hypotheses. These involved F distributions. So that's my summary of hypothesis tests for two populations.